Right now on the Power Chord Hour, we're talking to Tim Rogner of Allister. The band recently released their new album, Best of 20 Years and Counting, which features songs throughout the band's entire career, with some of the older songs re-recorded, as well as 4 brand new songs. And we're going to talk about all of that, the new record, and 20 years of the band. So, Tim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good. So, kicking this off, I've really been enjoying the new album, and it's a great career retrospective. I feel like it kind of touches on all of the like really strong points of the band's career. What was it like figuring out the songs to put on here? Was that difficult at all, or were you guys kind of like at the beginning of this? All right, we know exactly the songs that are going to represent, the last 20 years of this band.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was interesting. I think we had an idea of which songs we wanted to put on there. Fan reaction is usually kind of your best barometer for which are your better songs, I guess. And the songs that people want to hear. And so we probably knew going into this about 75% or 80% of the songs that we probably wanted to redo. But there was a good handful that we kind of debated about, and we kind of thought, should we do this one? Should we do that one? But ultimately, I'm really happy with the ones that we settled on. I think they came out sounding pretty cool. It was weird too, because we didn't know what to think about re-recording some of those old songs. We're old school kind of like punk rockers, and we're kind of under the impression that, look, man, you write a song, you record it, you put it on a record, and then you just let it die and you let it sit there for posterity's sake. And we were hesitant to go back and record some of those really old songs, but I'm ultimately really glad that we did, because I think they came out sounding even better, and if it's possible, even a little bit more current, which I think is cool. And the old versions of those songs are always going to be there. So if you like those better, you can always go listen to those too.
Well, I gotta agree too. Production wise, you did bring those songs, a lot of them, to current day, and even like the Dead Ends and Girlfriend songs. How was it? Like you were saying, it was kind of weird re-recording them, but it's like going back, like really those old ones that we're talking 20, the album title 20 years ago. Is that just surreal? Like going back and like, man, I did this 20 years ago, and like you have to relearn those songs. Is that surreal when you do that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, those songs were written, basically, like you said, about 20 years ago, and they were the first songs that some of the first songs that we ever really recorded. In fact, a couple of them, we even had like demos of before we recorded the first record, so those things we've been hearing the same way for 20 years. And so it was cool to kind of go back and rethink those songs and kind of reimagine them. Especially on Dead Ends of Girlfriends, that record, man, we recorded that record for $700 and we did the entire thing over the course of like 4.5 or 5 days. It was like, you can hear it on the record. Just listen to how fast we played. We had no time in the studio, so everything was like, play as fast as you can and just nail it in 1 or 2 takes.
That's what I was going to say. So on Dead Ends and Girlfriends, does that mean most of that is like one take?
For the most part, a good majority of it. I know, because that was back when I was playing drums.
Oh, you played drums on that?
I played drums on that record, and so I honestly don't think I did any song more than 3 times. It was we got it on either the first, second, or the third take. It was like, it was just like, okay, it's good enough. Let's live with it and let's keep going.
Do you think there's a charm, listening back though to that, where there's that, I feel like it depends, and I want to ask you, because artists sometimes differ, but I feel like a lot of fan perspective would go, well, you hear that, but it's almost charming. Like there's a rawness, there's kind of an energy, to the fact that you were young and just did it in a couple takes. Do you feel that way, or were you more like, is it hard? Like, you know what I'm saying?
No, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, and that's totally true, and that's kind of why we were a little hesitant to re-record some of those songs, because I know, first and foremost, like, we're all fans of music, before we're band members. You know, we just love playing rock and roll, and we like playing punk rock, and we know what it's like to be influenced by the bands that we used to listen to growing up. You know, and so I think back, like, man, if like Screeching Weasel or the Queers, or, you know, if they ever re-recorded some of those old records that are like really near and dear to my heart, how would I feel about that? And I go both ways. I love the nostalgia of listening to those original recordings, but there's also a part of me that's like, yeah, it might be kind of cool to see what it would sound like spruced up just a little bit.
I think you guys, I think you guys nailed it on the new one. Re-recording the old songs, I mean, were there any others? I know you said earlier when you were like thinking of it, there was like probably 80% that you knew were like fan favorites to put on. But were there any old songs you guys were thinking about re-recording that didn't make the cut?
We kind of talked about, there was a couple songs from Deadheads and Girlfriends, actually, only because that record was so old. You know, we talked about possibly doing, I'm trying to think of what songs from Deadhead. It was either Residential Burglary or maybe Timing. You know, we thought about maybe revisiting those. Maybe Westbound from Last Stop Suburbia. Or maybe like Better Late Than Forever. Maybe a couple of the tracks on Suburbia. But, you know, ultimately, like I said, I'm kind of glad we ended up choosing the ones that we did, especially from Deadheads and Girlfriends, Jacob and Mober.
I mean, looking back, I mean, it's a look back on the band's career, and going back to when you guys like started playing shows outside of like the Chicago area. I mean, like, do you remember the very first place that you guys played outside of Illinois?
Yeah, so probably one of the first shows that we ever did outside of Illinois was actually in Indiana. And I mean, so not too far outside of Illinois, but, you know, it was still outside of the state. But we actually opened for Apocalypse Hoboken and At the Drive-In. And it was like, yeah, it was like, I mean, this was probably 1997, maybe?
Wow.
Maybe spring of 97, sometime fall of 97. I think, anyways, either 97 or 98. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty wild. Like, at the time, I was a really big Apocalypse Hoboken fan. I don't know how much notoriety they have outside of Chicago. I know you said, what, are you from Buffalo?
Yeah, I'm like outside of Buffalo. I know who they are, and I feel like some of the people listening to the show like would probably know, but I definitely get what you're saying. I don't know a ton of other people who know of them.
Yeah, but they were pretty notorious in the Chicago area, just being fucking hardcore, man. I mean, these guys would put on a show, and it was intense. Like, every time they played, and it was great. So I was a huge fan, but I didn't really know too much about At the Drive-In at the time. Like, I had a lot of friends that were into them, but I wasn't necessarily. So, you know, that aspect of opening for At the Drive-In wasn't as cool to me as it was opening for Hoboken.
And
so
I mean,
it's cool to look back on it now.
And then, I mean, like looking back, how soon did Allister start playing shows when you guys got together?
So we originated as a three-piece, and I started the band with my friend John back in high school, and John and I had started kind of writing songs together, like either a junior or senior year in high school, and then we both went off to college, and it was just us two, and we didn't really have anyone else that we were playing with regularly. We had jammed with like a couple of guys, but they weren't really into punk rock. They wanted to play like Rush and Zeppelin and shit. And so John and I both went off to school, and that's where John met Eric, who joined the band within like a week of John meeting him, like the first day of class. And it wasn't too long after that we were able to get together and finish writing a bunch of songs and start playing some shows. In fact, I think the first show we probably played was like maybe 2 months after Eric joined the band.
Oh, wow.
We played like in a classroom down at U of I. what was really cool at the University of Illinois back when we were 18 is I don't know if they rented out these classrooms or if they just kind of like took them over, but they used to have shows in classrooms, like in some of the halls on campus. So yeah, it was really cool. So like they would get a PA and like we would set up our stuff and they would have touring bands play there. We didn't open for these guys, but I remember going to see the Bouncing Souls in like an old dingy classroom, Less Than Jake. It was pretty cool. I mean, they had a pretty thriving punk rock scene back in the late 90s at the University of Illinois in Champaign.
How many people, like shows like that, like were those decent size? Like for like how many people, I guess, can you fit in a classroom for a show? Were those decent sized shows?
Yeah, they were. I mean, it also depended on who was playing, but there was anywhere from, I would say 60 to 150, 200 people there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, that Bouncing Souls show that I saw was packed. Like, there had to have been at least 175 to 200 people there. And the place couldn't have held more than like 150.
I mean, even just the visual of a classroom, yeah, that's a lot of people for a classroom.
Yeah.
Even a college classroom.
Yeah. It was cool, man. It was a lot of fun.
I have a question, and it's a little, it's going back to Dead Ends and Girlfriends. I'm not sure how many people know this, but I was looking back, and I noticed that Rose Sahibi from one of my favorite drive-thru bands, Cousin Oliver, he produced Dead Ends and Girlfriends. And I was just wondering, how did you end up recording with him? Like, how did that decision for him to be producer get made?
It was actually, he was just recommended by Drive Thru.
Oh, okay.
Because obviously Cousin Oliver had put out their record, or I think, on Drive Thru, or it was associated with them in some way.
No, they did. I actually think that was the very first Drive Thru release, or one of them.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too. And we knew who Cousin Oliver was. Like, we knew the band. We didn't know the people in the band, but we knew who the band was. And so Drive Thru kind of suggested them, or Grow, to us. And we're like, yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, have him come in the studio and he can kind of help us, put some of these songs together and help us record. And so he did. And still to this day, my favorite thing about that record is his fucking gnarly guitar solo on Pictures on My Wall.
Oh, he does the solo on that?
Every time. Yeah, he played the solo on that.
Oh, that is sick. Yeah, I mean, I know a random band, but definitely something I was just wondering about. And, I mean, kind of on the subject of Drive Thru, how did you guys end up getting signed back there? And actually, you guys were one of the first Drive Thru bands, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we were. In fact, I think our 7-inch that they helped us release was like number 6 or 10 or something like that. Yeah, it's a weird story, and it's so long ago that I don't necessarily remember all the details. But, when we first started, as soon as Eric joined the band, we were writing a bunch of songs, and we recorded, like, I want to say 6 or 7 songs, just like on a shitty 8-track in the basement of my parents' house, and it sounded like garbage, and it was just total shit. But, we were 18, 19, we were pretty excited about it. And, so we started sending it out to record labels. And honestly, like, it was record labels that we would just see in thank you lists of other CDs of bands that we liked.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't really my role within the band. I didn't really handle that. That was kind of more John's thing. He was the one that kind of packaged up a bunch of these demos and sent them out, just physically mailed them copies. And he probably sent out, I don't know, maybe 12 to 15 tapes to some different labels, and Drive Thru was one of the only ones that actually responded. And they sent us a letter back, and they said, hey, you know what? We really like these songs. They were like, they sound like shit. The production is fucking terrible, but the songs are cool, and we like the songs. And they were like, record something else. If you can, go into like a real studio and record something and send it to us, and maybe we can kind of go from there. Well, at that time, we had already planned on recording we had already booked time in the studio because we wanted to put out a 7-inch ourselves. And so, a month after that, we went into a studio, just a local studio in the suburbs of Chicago, and we recorded 5 songs, which we then pressed ourselves into our 7-inch called You Can't Do That on Vinyl. And so we sent Drive Thru a copy of that, and they were like, we really like this, we love this, we want to help you put it out, and we want to do a record deal. And we were like, fucking A, all right, let's do it.
Very nice.
So, yeah, so that's kind of how it went.
And I mean, like Drive Thru is kind of a good example of this, but you guys came up in an era where I feel like compilations did stuff for bands. I mean, do you feel like I mean, I know Allister is on a ton of Drive Thru comps and all the other compilations. Like, do you feel like those used to really have an impact on bands, like maybe early or like late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, definitely. I know, when I was 15, that was how I found out about a lot of bands. In particular, that's how I found out about bands like Homegrown and Bouncing Souls. Is that I got comps that they were on. I was like, man, this song is awesome. I love this band. I kind of lost track on how many compilations Allister has actually been on, so it's hard for me to really gauge, the influence that we've had on some of those comps, or how, readily available our stuff has been to people who have picked up those comps. But it's absolutely helped our band, especially because of those Drive Thru comps.
And how are the shows that you guys just played in Japan earlier this month? I know you guys did a quick little tour over there.
Yeah, we just got back about 9 days ago or so, and we were there. I think we did either 7 or 8 shows, but they were awesome. I mean, they were great. They were probably some of the funnest shows that we've ever done collectively as a band. We were pretty stoked. Like, every show sold out pre-sale.
Oh, nice.
So it was really, really fun. We got to see a lot of old friends that we've known for a while, since we've been over in Japan a bunch. And we got to meet a lot of new friends on this tour too. We had some people kind of helping us out and working for us that were really cool that hopefully we can keep in contact with as the years kind of go by.
And then I know next week you're playing an acoustic show, I believe outside of Chicago. Do you play a lot of acoustic shows, or is this kind of more like a special one-off?
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of a resolution for me to start getting into playing more acoustic shows, and just kind of doing that in general. I love being in a band. I love playing music. I just want to kind of get out there and do it. And so, my goal is to play a bunch more acoustic shows this year. I'm hoping that I can even do, maybe some shows outside of Chicago. We'll kind of see how it goes. But yeah, this one coming up next week on Friday, on April 5th, it's like a south suburb of Chicago. So it's not too far, but it's at a bar that one of my friends owns. And we've been kind of talking for a while. He's like, man, you got to come and just play an acoustic show. I was like, how about we do it when I get back from Japan? I'll just come and play a bunch of Allister acoustic songs. And I've actually never done that before.
Oh, this is a first.
Yeah, this is a first for me to play pretty much an exclusive Allister acoustic set. I've done some acoustic shows before where I've played, some of my own solo songs. But this will be kind of a first where I do primarily just Allister stuff. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be cool.
Are Allister songs, I mean, I know some people start off acoustically. I mean, do you normally write Allister songs acoustically, or are you going to have to kind of like switch them up a little bit to fit them on acoustic?
Yeah, I kind of have to switch them up a little bit to fit them on acoustic. But it's cool. I've kind of worked through a few ideas, to kind of change them up a little bit to make them a little more conducive to an acoustic show. So I think it's gonna be cool. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And it's free.
Oh, very nice. So if anyone's in the area next week, go check that out. You said that was right in the suburb of Chicago, south suburbs?
Yeah, it's in the south suburb called Blue Island, and the bar is called Blue Island Beer Company.
Okay, very nice. And I mean, for Allister, is there any more planned for 2019 for you guys?
Well, we're not 100% sure. We're trying to work out some plans to possibly do just a short tour during the summer. Um, we're kind of putting together the logistics of it. It's difficult for us right now because we all have real jobs. We all have kids, and then Scotty, our bass player, lives full time in Japan and plays in a couple bands over there. So it's hard to find time for all of us to kind of get on the same schedule. But we think we may have some dates lined up for the summer, but we're not 100% sure yet. So
that would be the nice thing. If you start doing more acoustic shows, you can get out there more, play, kind of get some more ground. If it's just one of you, might make it a little easier.
Yeah, and that's what I'm kind of hoping for, because sometimes when I'm available, the other guys aren't, and when they're available, I'm not. So even if I can do things just on my own, just play some acoustic shows here and there, kind of keep the band name out there. Hopefully people will come out and get a beer with me and hang out.
I know I definitely will. I caught you guys when you played Buffalo last time, maybe 2014 with MXPX, and the one in Pittsburgh too, like the night before. So you guys, I mean, I try to catch you anytime, but I know you don't play the States as much. So yeah, that would be
Cool.
That would be so cool if you started doing acoustic shows.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually just now starting to kind of think about maybe doing just a short acoustic tour. So I don't have any details. Like I said, it's just in the planning stages, but definitely keep an eye out for it.
No, that will be awesome. And I mean, as we're winding this up, we're gonna have this interview, and then we're gonna play a bunch of stuff off 20 Years and Counting. And
Cool.
the first song we're gonna play is the new version of Somewhere on Fullerton, and it matches. I had a buddy who had a question for you, and it goes along with it. He was wondering, on the original recording of Somewhere on Fullerton, what guitar and amp did you use on that? He says he absolutely loves the sound on that song.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah, so on that record, I think the majority of that record, I was using a Fender. I think it was a Texas Stat Strat with a humbucker pickup in it, and I was playing. We kind of alternated amps between songs. I'm pretty sure on that one I was going back and forth between a Matchless and a JCM 800 and probably a dual rectifier.
I did guess the 800 right. When he asked me that question, I was trying to guess what you played, and I did guess an 800 on there. That was the one I got right.
Nice. I mean, they do have a pretty distinct sound, which I like.
And I got to agree with him. I mean, I think that record has some really nice production. And while we're on the subject, actually, of gear, on the new record, I mean, what did you play primarily on the new album?
So this is pretty interesting, right? So because we have such busy schedules, and we don't get a chance to get together very often, and like I said, Scotty lives in Japan full time.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think he only comes back to the U.S. maybe once or twice a year. We had to end up recording this newest record and re-recording all these songs essentially out of my bedroom.
Really?
Yeah. And so, but that's what's so rad about modern technology these days, is that you can do that, right? And it still sounds pretty fucking good. Yeah, we went into a studio to record the drums. We recorded all the drum tracks at this studio called Always Be Genius in, I forget what town it's in, Merrillville, Indiana, I think. It's like an hour and 20 minutes outside of Chicago. So we spent 2 days doing all the drum tracks there, and then we took all the drum tracks back to my house, and I would basically record all the guitars and then send all the files to Scotty, and he would do all the bass. And then I would do all my vocals and send them all to Scotty in Japan, and he would do all his vocals in his house in Japan. And then we took everything and sent it to our buddy Mark, who mixed it all down for us.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I played most of the guitar tracks I played using my my Les Paul Jr. There were some that I used Gibson Special, and a couple other ones that I used like a modified Ibanez. I forget what it's called, but it's like a modified Ibanez. And I just recorded that into some some guitar reamps, and then our buddy Mark just tweaked some things and made it sound pretty cool.
I think it sounds great. I can't. It's funny on an album like this. I mean, if you think back 20 years when you were recording that album, you probably never would have guessed that at one day you can make this album that sounds so good just from sending emails to one another, just writing it. You can now record and write music like that and have like high quality from your house.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the coolest part about it is that now it gives us the opportunity to do another record. We're kind of talking about, starting the wheels in motion to do another record. And since this one, we figured out we were able to do it this way, the next one's going to be a breeze.
Very nice. Now we're about to play Somewhere on Fullerton, but before we do that, I wanted to ask you, since the song is about a Fireside Bowl in Chicago, the whole reason I even know that location is from this song. I wanted to ask you, what was your favorite show Allister ever played at Fireside?
Oh boy, a favorite show that we ever played there? I don't know. It's hard to say. They kind of all blend together. We probably played there maybe 3 or 4 times, maybe 4 or 5. And I don't know if I have a particular favorite. Like, none of the shows that we ever played there like really stood out to me. It was just really cool that we were able to play there.
How about
probably the first one maybe that we played was the most special just because it was the Fireside.
How about shows you saw there? Is there one that stands out like as a favorite or one of your favorites?
Yeah, there's 2. So one, and probably my favorite, was the first show that I ever saw there, and it was actually probably the first show that I ever saw in my life when I want to say I was like 15. I had a friend, my friend Andy, had been to the Fireside and kind of started getting me into punk rock and started introducing me to new bands, and he was the one that told me, he's like, hey man, there's this really cool place called the Fireside, and they have these like punk bands play. You should come with me one day. I was like, okay, I'll come and check it out. And so I went down with him one night. It was like a Wednesday or a Thursday or something. And we went down, and it was this band from Chicago called the Boll Weevils, and band from California, and the band from California called Rhythm Collision. And I'd never heard of any of these bands before. I just went because my friend had kind of suggested it. And I'll never forget, from the very first note of Rhythm Collision set, because I think they were playing before the Boll Weevils. From the first note, I was absolutely fucking blown away. All right, it was the coolest, loudest, most awesome thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I just remember sitting here thinking, like, holy shit, this is the fucking coolest thing I've ever seen. This is what I want to do.
That's awesome.
And like I'll never forget that show. And it's funny because like neither of those 2 bands I would classify as like some of my favorite bands, but they probably left the biggest impression on me just because it was the first time I ever experienced, true underground punk rock.
That is awesome. I feel like that's a good way to like close this off. And where can people follow you online? Where can they follow the band online?
We just put up a new website. It's allisterofficial.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Tim Allister, and you can also follow me on Twitter at HumbugRog. It's HUMBUGROG.
And are you doing the blog at all anymore? I used to love reading the You Can't Do That on Tour.
Yeah, you know what? I started that, and I was doing it for a while, and then I just kind of got busy doing other stuff, and truthfully just kind of forgot about it. I may try to pick that up in the future because that was kind of fun writing about some of those things.
You have some great stories in there. And anyone listening, if you've never checked that out, you go check them out. You Can't Do That on Tour. That great stuff on there. Yeah, there were some. We had some good times on the road. That's for sure. Well, Tim, I've had a blast talking to you. Like I said, go check out Allister's new album, 20 Years and Counting. We're gonna play a ton of it off of it right now, and we're gonna kick it off with Somewhere on Fullerton right here on the Power Chord Hour.